Hi Flosstube, I'm Deb, I'm the Traveling Stocking Stitcher, and I'm happy to have you here today. I'm calling this episode F.L.O.S.S, F-L-O-S-S, and it stands for Fancy Ladies of Souvenir Stitching. You know I like to do travel posters to commemorate the places that I've been, and so I recently went on a trip to Central Europe, and I've gone through and picked out a design to represent each of the cities that we stopped and visited, and two of those are Fancy Ladies. And it got me thinking, you know, back in the 80s they had Glow, they had Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, and a TV show with professional wrestlers, and I thought, well, you know, maybe that's what I'll do for this. And by the way, there's also a great Netflix series that is called Glow, and it's about the Gorgeous Ladies Wrestling, and it was a couple of years ago. Allison Brie, Mark Maron, and Betty Gilpin recommend that you might want to check that one out. But this is going to be the Fancy Ladies of Souvenir Stitching, and I've got some things I want to show you. I've got a real good start, almost halfway done, I think, on one of the things that I picked out, and I've got three others that are things that I want to do, and I'll talk about some of the other things that I saw and considered, so if you're interested in stitching some of those things yourself. I've got a couple of whips that I was working on either on the trip or before the trip, so I've got a lot to cover today, so let's get started. You know, I usually like to have a tie-in with the theme, and either an article of clothing or a prop or something, and it did cross my mind to go all in on this and put on a Nacho Libre Mexican wrestling mask, or maybe some big 80s hair, unitard, some tights, but instead I just decided to wear the scarf that I bought as a souvenir as well. So this I got in Hungary, and it says Hungary right on it, in Budapest, and this is the Hungarian Parliament, Danube River, and on the back side it's a huge scarf, so I'll put in a picture of what it looks like, because I don't think I'd be able to stretch it all the way out for you to see. And then on the other side of the river is the Buda side of town. There are two separate cities that consolidated into one in about 1873. And over on the Buda side you have like the castle and the St. Matthias Church, or Matthias Church, I don't think he was a saint, and Fisherman's Bastion. I'll throw some photos in here so you get a little feel of things as well. So the first city that we visited was Budapest, Hungary, and beautiful. I was very impressed. It's a very elegant city. I could just imagine, you know, beautiful women in gorgeous gowns riding through town with their horse-drawn carriages and being escorted with men in top hats, you know, in the late 1800s or something like that. So gorgeous town. I was expecting it to be a little rougher. Didn't see you know, a lot of graffiti, which is sometimes an issue in European cities. But it was the architecture was beautiful. More Art Nouveau. All the places that we visited had a lot of Art Nouveau architecture, which is, you know, gorgeous stuff. And so we visited. I'll just throw a few pictures. We visited on the Buda side. We visited Matthias Church, and looked out across the Danube from the Fisherman's Wharf. While we were there, we had actually a couple of incidents, almost a couple of international incidents. First one was in Budapest. There was a state visit that was about to happen. President Xi Jinping from China was coming to Hungary, and we were touring that area, and he and his entourage of 400 people had rented out the Hilton and were about to converge on the area. So there were security people around, and they were about to start closing things down. So it's fortunate, I think, that we got to see what we got to see, because I'm sure that they were going to kind of take over that area and not let other people in. So kind of saw that kind of stuff. Then we did go over to the Heroes Square a little bit later, and it's kind of where they have their Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and dedication to war heroes. And suddenly here comes this band of military guys with drums and flags, and there was some local dignitaries that looked like they were going to be marching up to the tomb of the unknown soldier. And so a little while later, the bus went around, and here's a woman in this dress that looked like she probably could have been Mrs. Jean there to lay a wreath, probably, is what's going on. So we saw that. I also visited St. Stephen's Basilica, beautiful interior building, and went across the chain bridge with the lions. Probably the highlight of the trip was a dinner cruise on the Danube, and we were on a tour, and this was an actual tour you could go on, and we had the boat all to ourselves, to our group, and had a lovely buffet dinner, and then went up on deck at dusk and saw all the buildings lit up, and the Hungarian Parliament is just a gorgeous building, and that was all aglow, and the Buda Castle, and everything was just lovely. And one of the things that when we were visiting the Hungarian Parliament, there was a hall where they had statues of various tradespeople and craftsmen, and they were all holding things related to their particular trade. So if they were fishermen, or they had a pole, if they were carpenters, they had some tools. And then I saw this woman that I swear she looks like she's holding a scroll frame. Does she not look like she's cross-stitching? So we are represented in the Hungarian Parliament building. She's right there. What I have picked out for what I want to stitch for that is a piece that I found on Etsy. It's from Artisan Cross Stitch shop, and it's the Hungarian Parliament building, and it's across the river in Buda at the Fisherman's Bastion, which is a kind of overlook monument to, as a tribute to fishermen, and it's looking across, and you see the Hungarian Parliament building, which we also toured. Beautiful building. But I actually have a photo that I took that is kind of unintentionally the same view of this cross-stitch piece. So this is what I intend to work on. One of the things that I happened to run across in every city that I went to and just randomly walking around were sewing shops, which kind of surprised me because I wasn't looking for them. I hadn't set out and just walking along. Here they are. They weren't dedicated to stitching, but they had some needlework and stitching. They had like a DMC display, or they had some kits, and quite honestly, for these little shops that are a fraction of the size, they had as much content, cross-stitch stuff, as Michael's or Joann's or Hobby Lobby do, and much tinier footprint. So one of the places in Budapest that I happened to walk into had this canvas. Unfortunately, it was a needlepoint canvas, and I've done some needlepoint, but it's been a long time, and it was large. It was like 7 inches by 20 inches, and it was just, it used DMC or Anchor. They had the conversion for it, but it was just the canvas itself, put out by Royal Paris. I did find it on eBay, so if I really wanted it, or you want it, I don't think I'm going to do it, but it's out there, and it is just the Hungarian Parliament. It's a portrait as opposed to horizontal. And so I was just, like I said, stunned to find so many sewing shops that are out there. So the next place that we visited was Vienna, Austria. And again, a very beautiful city, lovely architecture. It felt a little more formal than Budapest, but still gorgeous stuff. We took a tour of the Schönbrunn Palace, and this is where the Habsburgs spent their summers, and gorgeous palace. And the gardens, they were still starting to put in some of the flowers for the season, but there were some beautiful rose bushes and things to see. We also toured the Hofburg Imperial Palace, and saw the Berg Theater and the Austrian Parliament. There was probably more Art Nouveau than I anticipated as well there. And so the Karlplatz Pavilion train station is a great example of that, and the Secession Building, and the Medallion House, the Majolica House. So really lovely Art Nouveau if you're fascinated by that. So those are some of the considerations when I was looking for designs to stitch. All of the cities that we saw had a fair example of that, so I'll talk a little bit about those as well. So those are kind of some of the things that we saw, and for this is the one that I have a fancy lady for, and I've got a decent start on this one. This is called Vienna Ballet. It's from Diana70 is the Etsy shop that I got it from, and it's it was big. It was like 28 by 35 for the size, but it said in her comments on her shop that she's, if you're interested in a different size, she was willing to accommodate that. So I sent her a note and said I'd like this to fit in 11 by 14. Probably 22 count was as small as I wanted to go. She came back and said, you know, because I was thinking it had to be like about 40% less than what the design was. And she came back quickly and said, here's a couple of different sizes, which one would you like? And I said, oh, let's take this one. So I got it down to, instead of 400 by 496 stitches, this is 240 by 302, so it will fit in an 11 by 14 frame just nicely. The artwork is by Andrea Laliberte, and I'll put that in the description. All the information will be down in the description. So I'm doing it 22 count, 1/1 on ivory hardanger. And it went on to Pattern Keeper nicely, and it would be hard to do without Pattern Keeper because there are a lot of beiges, same colors, and but it's working very nicely. And so I'm not going to stitch the background on it. So here's what I have. This is Vienna Ballet. Probably about halfway done considering what I'm going to be doing. I've got a little bit of a start down here in the corner of the frame. I started out over here, and I started out with 2 strands, and it was looking real bulky, and I'm glad I switched it down to 1 strand. It's on 22 count, so I switched that off, and then I started moving on to the dress. One of the concerns I have is, you see I've got a little bit of the blue in here. There's a 939, and then I think this is 336, so there's another blue color, and then this is 158, I think it is. I'm just concerned that the blues are going to be so similar that I'm not going to see, you can see that there's a pattern to the dress with mostly the 939 in there. I'm hoping it will still show up the different, the detailing on it. And I did consider maybe doing half stitches, 10 stitches on the building, since it is kind of a sketch picture of things, but I think it's turning out pretty well. Not stitching the background, I kind of was a little concerned about how well I was going to be able to pick out where things started and ended, because they all are, you know, shades of beige for the most part. But it was pretty easy to figure out what the primary background colors were and be able to stitch that. So there is my first fancy lady of souvenir stitching. One of the other things, like I said, I was very pleased with the customer service from Diana70 Etsy shop, because once I got it started stitching this, I thought, oh, you know what? She has some others in this series that I would like as well. So I asked if she would resize those, and she said sure. And there is a New York Symphony one. I don't know if I went to New York, but I don't know that I saw the Symphony building. But it's a fancy lady in front of a cool architecture in a town that I went to, so of course I'm going to get that. There is the Venice Opera, Venice Opera at the Grand Teatro di Venezia. Went to Venice, and I'm not sure if I actually saw the theater. I looked on the map, and it's kind of in this little cul-de-sac. You wouldn't like run across it just walking around. So, but again, close enough. And then the other one that they have is the Paris Opera, Soirée d'Opéra à Paris, and I did go in the Paris Opera. So my last video was about part 1, Paris, Notre Dame. I'm doing some stitching that's going to be about a part 2 that's going to be the Eiffel Tower of Paris, and I might have to do a Paris Opera one as well. They also have a series that are a little more contemporary with from the same artist, Andrea Laliberte, and she has a New York girl with a dog that shows the Empire State Building, and a London girl with an umbrella by Big Ben, and a Rome girl with a book in front of the Coliseum, and a Paris girl with some shopping bags in front of the Eiffel Tower. So, again, more fancy ladies for souvenir stitching. These other three that are also by the same designer are same artwork, I should say. She came back to me and said, yep, we can size them for you. She said, I typically have a thing where if you buy three, you get a fourth one free. So if you want to pick out something else when you buy these other three. And I looked through and I thought, and she said, or the other option she offered me was because I already bought the other one, and buying these three, she would give one of these three to me for free, which I thought was very kind, because I didn't really see anything on the shop that even mentioned that promotion. So she has a lot of like paintings, full coverage kinds of things. So there were other options that I could have stitched as well. One of the things, she has Empress Sisi, and the Habsburgs' imperial palaces include the Empress Sisi's apartments that we could have visited, but this was a little more full coverage than I'm willing to commit to. But that's one option. But if you're looking for designs that are more like 1800s, 1900s paintings, maybe even 1700s paintings, she's got a lot of those of artwork and stuff out there, so great stuff. So one other thing about the customer service I got from Diana70, and a warning to you as well if you're processing orders on Etsy, I placed my order and I got an error message on my phone that said, try again. And so I pushed the button again and tried it again. And it said it errored out again. And before I did it a third time, I went over and looked, and sure enough, it processed both orders just fine. So beware, don't do that. If Etsy says you have an error, check it, make sure that it went through or not. But I just messaged Diana, and she refunded, no questions asked, right away, promptly. So, yeah, great customer service. Really appreciated that. Some of the other things that were considerations were some Klimt, because Gustav Klimt is a Austrian painter, and so that would be another choice. So the Kiss, or what's the other one? There's the Golden. No, they made a movie about it. The Woman in Gold, I think it was called. Helen Mirren and Ryan Reynolds, about a woman who'd had the artwork taken from her family during the war, and she tried to get it back. So another movie recommendation for you if you're looking for one. So that would be a thought as well. One of the other considerations I thought about doing, there is a Vienna chatelaine, but I took a look at it, and it's very similar on all four sides, so the motifs are very repetitive, and I'm working on my first chatelaine, or first big mandala chatelaine right now, and even though some elements are different, there's enough similar ones that I've sort of, there's other reasons, but you know, it's a little harder to pick up when you already stitched that thing before. But this, all four sides seem to be very similar, so I think I'll pass on the Vienna chatelaine for this consideration. And then, like I mentioned, some Art Nouveau stuff. If you want to do some Art Nouveau, one of the things I considered is the Bivsters. I have this one. It's a 1920s style violet flower gate in the wood in Sunrise Forest is the name. But it looked very Art Nouveau-y to me. Or another one that I liked is called Snowdrop Cross Stitch Pattern. It's a German calendar design from the 1900s, and the Etsy shop is called Whoopie Cat. And I'll put that on the description box as well. And from Vienna we took a half-day trip to Bratslava, Slovakia, and kind of just had a little local guide show us around, and then we had about 45 minutes or so to see things. So we didn't get to see a ton of stuff. There's this cool church that I wanted to go see. It's called the Blue Church. I'm glad we walked over to it. It took like 10 minutes to get there and 10 minutes to get back, so I kind of ate up most of our time in Bratslava. But I think it's called the Elizabeth Church. But it was a blue church. It was cool. I like the color blue. So the second international incident, or almost international incident, that we had was in Bratslava. About 2 days, we were still on the trip, about 2 days after we left Bratislava, the Slovakian Prime Minister had a failed assassination attempt on his life. Now, he wasn't in Bratislava, which is the capital, which we kind of would have expected. He was in some other town a ways away, but you don't usually hear news about Slovakia. So we were nowhere near the place at the time. So the choice, I mean, again, kind of obscure, but Lifted Spirit Patterns on Etsy has a lot of unusual, out-of-the-way places that you don't normally have. I don't know if I've ever stitched one, but I've got probably 3 or 4 patterns because they're not standard, places that you normally have heard of. And this one is Bratislava Castle travel poster, and these fit right into my wheelhouse because they are already about 11 by 14 size frame thing. They look like travel posters. They have the name and stuff, so that's going to be my choice for doing Bratislava. And then from Vienna, we went to Prague for 3 nights, and gorgeous city. Just stunning, and it's actually the best preserved city in Europe because it's got it didn't get a lot of damage during the war. It has a lot of, again, Art Nouveau from, so it's sort of got medieval stuff from the 1400s all the way up to the turn of the century, 1900s, Art Nouveau and just gorgeous buildings and spires. It's called the City of 100 Spires. They actually think there's probably anywhere from 500 to 1,000 spires. But you can see some of the things. There's the Old Town Square that has all these beautiful buildings. They have an astronomical clock that goes back to the 1400s that has a little show where the little marionettes go around and appear in the window every hour when the clock strikes, and it's got all this phases of the sun and the moon and a calendar of all the saints that rotates around. So back in the day when people didn't read and didn't have clocks, they could see everything they need in picture form. And it still works. We're out there, and everybody showed up for the top of the hour and saw a little procession of the apostles going around poking their heads out the window. So, and then we visited the Prague Castle and the whole complex there, and visited St. Vitus' Cathedral, and of course Charles Bridge with the big towers and the statues that run all the way along the side. So just a lovely, lovely city. So my choice for that, another fancy lady we've got here, this is going to be Raven Queen by Mirabilia. And how can you look at this picture with this spire and not see Prague all over it, whether it's the powder tower that is where they kept the powder, the gunpowder in, or the Charles Bridge Tower. There's so many places. The Tyne Church in Old Town Square's got all these different spires that are on it as well. So that's my choice for it. Now it's going to be a little tricky to make into a travel poster because it's 17 inches long, and you can't really cheat on Mirabilia's because of the beading. You can't really make it a lot smaller, otherwise things aren't going to fit. But I mean, she's probably going to just be a special situation that gets her own kind of frame. She sort of fits in with the John Clayton Internationals because they're long and skinny as well, so maybe you can find a way to incorporate that into a display with her as well. And the dress, the aqua part of the dress kind of throws me a little bit, so I'm going to have to do a little thinking about this. And I do have a seal of approval shout out. I like to have something that ties in with the theme, and there is a floss tube. It's an old video. She hasn't done any videos for a few years. This is a video from 6 years ago, but she's called the Evergreen Needle, and she's got some stuff on Instagram as well. But she has a gold conversion of the Raven Queen from Mirabilia, and it's breathtaking. That's all I can say, is you have to go see this. The dress is all made in gold, and it glows. It's just fantastic. So I think if I can figure out what she did there, and I think she has it documented. I'd have to look at I think she said her video notes had a lot of information on it. But she also had, even if you're not looking at doing the color conversion, if you're thinking about doing Raven Queen, I would recommend that you check her video out. I'll just go look at it anyway because it's gorgeous. But she had some great advice. So, like for instance, she said the torso was not symmetrical, and so she did some shaping on that, and she added some more beads in the crown, and some smaller beads in the crown to make it look even more regal and more blingy and resplendent. So beautiful job. So I highly recommend the Evergreen Needle, her video on the Raven Queen conversion. And I think like I said, she's on Instagram, and she's currently doing Mucha Bohemian design, and Alphonse Mucha is another consideration that I had thought of for doing my stitching for Prague, because he was a Czech painter and had done, you see a fair number available in cross stitch form. And as a matter of fact, one of the places that we went into the mall of all places. There's right around the corner from our hotel. We were hungry one night, wanted to grab something real quick, and we were tired, so we'll pop in the mall and grab something to eat and go back to the hotel. And walked by, and here is a stitch shop in a shopping mall. Does not happen in the U.S. Not a standalone, well, again, a sewing shop. But they had a pretty good selection of things, and one of the things they had there, unfortunately, again, a needlepoint. But it was the spring from Alphonse Mucha. The company is Orchidea, Orchidea kit, and I think I found it online as well, so if you wanted to buy it online. But again, it was bigger. But one of the things about the Muchas, and Diana70 also had a number of Mucha designs on her site. The one that I kind of thought I liked the best was Reverie. But when I look at the Muchas, I guess the most charitable thing, when you're stitching fancy ladies, the face can make or break things. When I look at the Muchas, the best thing I can think of is they look like sturdy women, their faces. So that's where I kind of have a hard time stitching one of those. So, but the one I saw, I almost bought it. The face in spring looked much softer than typically I'm used to for those kinds of things. So. But speaking of Mucha, we went to the St. Vitus Cathedral, and in there is a beautiful, just beautiful, stunning, vibrant stained glass window that was designed by Alphonse Mucha in 1931, and it is the story of St. Wenceslas. And I mean, just the colors and the brilliance of the, if somebody would design a stained glass window cross stitch based on that, I'd be all over that thing. Whether it could shine the way this window does, I don't know. Probably with enough Krynic, sure. But yeah, it was just beautiful. So very lovely. Some other options for all of the cities that we visited. Awesome Pattern Studio I've done, and I've shown some of their stuff before. They have kind of suggestions of the town. They've got some buildings and they're different colors and stuff. But I've kind of found as I've worked through them that I can't always pick out, even though I've been there, what some of the buildings are. But again, the more obscure cities, they have so many. They have 600 some cities that are to choose from, and they're small. They're like 8 by 8 typically. But since I found other things that I like better, I think I will pass on those. But they are a source for all of these different places. So that was our trip, and those are the things that I've picked out to stitch. And the last thing I have to show you are the whips that I have in progress as well. So the first one that I have up here you've seen before. This is Parisian Window. I mentioned that I am doing a France Eiffel Tower episode in the future. And so this is from the Vivsters. Last time you saw it, it was about 42%. Now it's almost 61%, 60.88%. And this is 31,525 stitches in total. I'm doing it on 18 count white. And yeah, Parisian Window. Again, this is the kind of an Art Nouveau feel in this one as well. And then the one that I was stitching on the trip, this is for an upcoming episode I'm going to do. For a few years ago, we went to the Amalfi Coast in Italy and visited Sorrento, where they have lots and lots of lemons. So this one is called Lemons. And it's from, Lemons Cross Stitch Blue Tile is the name of the, on Etsy. It's from Natalka, Natalka Studio on Etsy. And I'm doing it on 14 count white. And it's about 30.9, so almost 31% completed. So just very beautiful, vibrant colors. Very pretty. It was easy to stitch on bus and in the plane and stuff like that. So, and thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed yourself, I hope you feel free to like and subscribe. Feel free to leave me a comment if you've been to any of these places and have recollections that you want to share with me, or ideas for things that you want to stitch, fancy ladies of souvenir stitching, or other scenic things that relate to the places that we visited. And we'll hope to see you again soon. Thanks for coming with me. Bye.